Have you ever walked into your aging parents' room at 3 in the morning and found them just sitting there, completely awake, staring at nothing? Not watching TV, not reading, just sitting, and you asked them if they were okay, and they smiled and said yes, and you went back to bed feeling like you missed something important, but you couldn't name what it was. That moment is not random, and it is not just about sleep. What happens in the early morning hours inside the mind of an aging parent is one of the most misunderstood things in family life. Most people chalk it up to a weak bladder or pain or old age, doing what old age does. But if you actually slow down and look at what is going on beneath the surface, you will find something far more complex and, honestly, far more heartbreaking. And the reason most families never get to the bottom of it is not because the information is hard to find. It is because the conversation is hard to start. The body clock shifts as people age. That part is real, and it is biological. The circadian rhythm, which is the internal system that tells your body when to sleep and when to wake, gradually moves earlier as you get older. Your parent is not choosing to wake at 3 in the morning. Their body is pulling them out of sleep whether they want it or not. But here's the part that gets lost in that explanation. Biology explains the waking. It does not explain what happens in the mind once the eyes open. At 3 in the morning, the house is silent. The phone is not ringing. Nobody needs anything. There's no task to complete, no meal to prepare, no grandchild to watch. And in that silence, the mind does not rest. It works. It goes back through decades of memory with a kind of focus that daytime simply does not allow. Your parent is not just awake. They are reviewing, replaying, recalculating. Older adults spend a significant portion of those quiet early hours in something psychologists call life review. It is not nostalgia. Nostalgia is warm and selective. Life review is honest, sometimes painfully so. It is the mind going back through choices made and paths not taken, through words said in anger that were never walked back, through years that passed faster than anyone expected. It happens most intensely in the quiet dark, when there is nothing left to distract from it. And the thing about life review is that it is not always painful. Sometimes it is tender. Sometimes your parent is sitting in the dark smiling at something you will never know about, a moment from 30 years ago that still feels alive to them. But even the beautiful memories carry weight at that hour, because beautiful memories remind you of how much time is already gone. And here is where it gets complicated, because the emotions that come up during life review are not always resolved by morning. Your parent might sit with a memory of something they regret, something they never told you about, for an hour before the sun comes up. Then you walk in and they smile, and you get breakfast going, and that whole interior world they were just living in gets folded away again. Not because they want to hide it, because they do not know how to bring it into a kitchen that smells like coffee and toast. There is also something happening around identity that very few people talk about. Your parents spent decades being needed. They built their sense of self around being capable, being the person who fixed things, made decisions, provided for people, and slowly, quietly, that role shifted. Maybe they stopped driving. Maybe they handed over the finances. Maybe they started asking you for help with things they used to do without thinking. Every one of those moments is a small loss, and those losses accumulate in the body the same way grief does. Think about what it actually means to hand over your car keys. For most people that age, driving was not just transportation. It was independence. It was the ability to leave when you wanted, to go where you needed to, handle your own life without asking permission or waiting for someone to be available. The day that ends is not a small thing. It just looks small from the outside. At 3 in the morning, when the world is dark and still, those accumulated losses have a voice. The waking is not just physical. It is the psyche processing change that it never fully had time to sit with during the day. Your parent is grieving quietly, in the dark, without calling it grief, and without asking for anything from you. There is also fear mixed into all of this, but not the kind you might assume. Most people imagine that aging parents lie awake afraid of dying. Sometimes that is true, but more often the fear is about becoming a burden. It is about losing dignity. It is about the body failing in ways that feel humiliating. It is about watching you stress and not being able to take that stress away. Your parent, who spent their whole life trying to make things easier for you, now sometimes feels like the thing making things harder, and that thought does not leave a person easily at 3 in the morning. And underneath that fear is something even quieter. It is the fear of irrelevance, of becoming someone whose opinions no longer get asked for, of sitting at the dinner table while a conversation moves too fast and not finding a way in, of being present in a room while feeling invisible inside it. That specific kind of loneliness does not announce itself. It just settles in, slowly, over months and years, and it is loudest at 3 in the morning when there is nothing else to fill the space. So, what do you actually do with all of this? You cannot fix the biology. You cannot stop the life review, but you can change the container your parent has to hold all of it in. Start by making space for the conversation during the day, not with clinical language, not with a formal sit-down that signals something is wrong, just with openness. Ask about their memories, not to check on them, but because you genuinely want to know. Ask about a decade you never heard much about. Ask what they are proud of. Ask what surprised them most about getting older. When Life Review has somewhere to go in daylight, it does not have to do all its work at 3 in the morning. If they are open to it, talk to their doctor about the sleep changes, not to medicate them into unconsciousness, but to rule out pain, anxiety, or other manageable causes. Sometimes a small adjustment in environment, a lighter dinner, less screen time in the evening, a bedroom that is cooler and darker makes a real difference. These are not dramatic interventions. They are small acts of care that say you are paying attention, and pay attention to the fear of being a burden specifically. Find ways to show your parent that their presence in your life is not a weight, not through grand gestures, but through the ordinary moments, asking their opinion when you do not have to, sitting with them in comfortable silence, calling not because you need something, but because you wanted to hear their voice. Those things land differently than you think. A 5-minute phone call where you ask nothing and just talked can do more for an aging parent's sense of worth than a weekend visit where you were distracted the whole time. And if you can, try to include them in the texture of your daily life, not just the big occasions. Let them know when something small went well for you. Share something frustrating that happened at work. Ask what they think you should do. They may not always have the answer, but being asked reminds them that their perspective still has value to you. That reminder matters more than most people realize. Here is the part that is hard to sit with. You will not always get the timing right. There will be mornings where you were too tired, too rushed, too caught up in your own life to notice that they seem distant. There will be conversations you should have started that you kept putting off because there was always going to be more time. And then one day, the 3 in the morning becomes something else entirely, and you will find yourself wishing you had paid more attention on the ordinary days. That is not a guilt trip. It is just the honest reality of how these seasons of life work. The window is not infinite, and the things your parent is carrying alone in the dark in those quiet hours before the world wakes up are things that deserve to be shared out loud with you before it is too late for either of you to do anything with them. There is a particular kind of grief that comes after losing a parent, one that has nothing to do with the loss itself and everything to do with the conversations that never happened, the questions you never asked, the stories you never heard, the afternoon you were going to sit down with them and really talk when things slowed down, when you had more time. Grief for what was unsaid is a specific kind of weight, and it does not get lighter with time the way other grief does. It stays sharp. Aging is not a problem to be managed from a distance. It is a relationship that asks something of you, not just logistically, not just practically, but emotionally and with your full presence. Your parent is not broken because they wake up at 3 in the morning. They are human, and they are processing a life that was long and complicated and full of things they never found the right words for. The next time you find them awake in the dark, do not just ask if they are okay. Sit down. Let the silence be shared instead of solitary. You do not have to say anything extraordinary. You just have to be there, fully there, and mean it. Because the thing they are most afraid of is not the dark. It is disappearing from it without anyone ever really knowing what went on inside them.